The rain in this city doesn't wash anything away. It just makes the grime slicker, harder to hold on to. I stepped past the yellow police tape and the smell hit me before I even saw the body. It wasn't the metallic copper tang of blood, though there was plenty of that. It was the smell of truffle oil, seared scallops, and something burning, sweet and sickening. The kitchen of the Gilded Spoon was usually a place of organized chaos, a temple to gluttony for the city's elite. Tonight, it was a slaughterhouse. The steam from the massive stock pots was still rising, mingling with the cigarette smoke of the beat cops who stood around looking green. They didn't know what to make of it. They never do when the menu changes from filet mignon to homicide. This is case 006, The Feast of Regret, written by the city, transcribed by me, Levi Davis. The date was October 14th, 3 a.m. The location, downtown's culinary district, where the rats eat better than the people in the tenements 3 blocks over. The check that brought me here was signed by Aurora Brooks. She wasn't just the maitre d', she was the money behind the genius, the woman who kept the creditors at bay while the artist played with fire. She walked into my office 3 hours earlier, dripping wet, her mascara running like oil streaks on a rainy highway. She didn't cry. Crying implies hope. She just looked hollow. "Find out who did it, Levi," she said, her voice sounding like crushed glass. "The police think it was a robbery gone wrong, but nothing was stolen, except him." She slapped a stack of bills on my desk, thick enough to choke a horse or pay my back rent for 3 months. Her eyes were the color of cold coffee, and they held the specific terror of someone who knows their investment has just been liquidated. I took the job. My door doesn't open for virtue. It opens for desperate women with cash and a story that smells like trouble. I looked down at the victim, Santiago Ross. He was the head chef, a man who claimed he could cook the soul of the city. Now, he was part of the presentation. He was slumped over the stainless steel prep table, a carving knife buried to the hilt in his chest. But that wasn't the disturbing part. The disturbing part was the table setting around him. Fine china, crystal glasses, a bottle of 1945 Bordeaux uncorked and breathing. Someone had set the table for dinner, and Santiago was the main course. The forensic boys were dusting for prints on the wine glass, but I knew they wouldn't find any. This wasn't a crime of passion, not the messy kind. This was a ceremony. I lit a cigarette, ignoring the protest of a uniformed officer. The police see a dead cook. I saw a message. The killer didn't just want Santiago dead. They wanted to consume what he represented. I looked at the ingredients scattered on the floor. Rare herbs, a notebook torn in half. I knew then that to solve this, I'd have to dig into the appetite of a city that devours its idols. The official report would be dry and sterile. But you're not here for the autopsy report. You're here for the truth that hides in the shadows. And that's exactly where I work. I poured myself 3 fingers of bourbon, the cheap stuff that burns the throat enough to make you forget the smell of the morgue, and stared at the evidence board. The police were already dragging in the usual suspects. The busboy with a record, the delivery driver who argued about an invoice. Amateurs. They look at the surface. I look at the cracks. The story Aurora Brooks spun me was too clean. She claimed everyone loved Santiago Ross. But nobody is loved that much, especially not a chef who treats his kitchen like a dictatorship. In my line of work, you learn that admiration is just envy waiting for a knife. The clues were subtle, the kind that scream only if you know how to listen. First, there was the notebook found near the body. It wasn't just a recipe book, it was a diary of obsessions. Santiago believed that taste was memory, that if you cooked a dish perfectly enough, you could force the diner to relive a moment in time. He called it culinary necromancy. Then there was the wine glass. It wasn't empty. It had a trace of lipstick on the rim, a shade of crimson that didn't match Aurora's. And finally, the murder weapon. It was a Japanese sashimi knife, custom steel, worth more than my car. It belonged to the sous chef, Caleb Jimenez. I went to see Caleb. He lived in a studio apartment that smelled of bleach and resentment. When I pressed him, he didn't fold, he shattered. He admitted he hated Santiago. He stole everything. Caleb spat, pacing the room like a caged animal. My recipes, my ideas. He said I didn't have the soul to execute them. but Caleb was left-handed. The angle of the knife in Santiago's chest suggested a right-handed strike. Violence is a language, and Caleb spoke a different dialect. He was a red herring, a man paralyzed by bitterness, not motivated enough for murder. The real break came when I looked at the psychology of the crime. The table setting, the specific arrangement of the herbs. It mimicked a famous painting Santiago had hanging in his office, Saturn devouring his son. This wasn't about theft, it was about absorption. I went back to the restaurant, bypassing the police tape, and found Elias Wright, the quiet, unassuming apprentice who washed the vegetables. He was in the back, meticulously sharpening a blade. Elias was the invisible man, the one nobody looked at twice. He idolized Santiago to the point of sickness. I found the missing pages of Santiago's journal in Elias' locker. He didn't want to steal the recipes to sell them. He wanted to become Santiago. He believed the chef's genius was a physical thing, something that could be transferred through a ritual. When I confronted him, he didn't run. He smiled, a terrifying, serene smile. "I needed to know," he whispered. "I needed to taste the secret." He thought by consuming the master's life, he would inherit the master's gift. It was a delusion born of pure, unadulterated desperation. The city grinds people down until they think magic is the only way out. I looked at him and saw the face of a man who had eaten the fruit of knowledge and found it rotten. I called the cops, but the handcuffs didn't seem to bother him. He was already somewhere else, lost in a feast that only he could see. Truth is a nasty business. It doesn't set you free. It just leaves you with a hangover and a new enemy. The police took Elias Wright away in the back of a squad car, the red and blue lights washing over the wet pavement like a fever dream. He didn't scream. He didn't beg. He just hummed a low, discordant tune, likely some melody he thought he'd extracted from the dead chef's soul. Aurora Brooks stood under the awning of the Gilded Spoon, smoking a long, thin cigarette. When I told her it was the apprentice, the boy she'd hired out of charity, she didn't look surprised. She looked relieved. The scandal would make the restaurant legendary. People would line up around the block to eat at the place where the cannibal chef worked. She handed me the rest of my fee in a crisp envelope. "Business is business, Levi," she said. She was right. The dead were just marketing collateral now. Technically, the modus operandi was a classic psychotic break, fueled by an inferiority complex, layered with a delusion of sympathetic magic. Elias fit the profile of the devoted shadow, the follower whose admiration curdles into a pathological need to possess the idol. It's a tale as old as time, or at least as old as Cain and Abel. He believed that talent was a finite resource that could be harvested. In the forensic manuals, they call it acquisitive homicide. On the street, we just call it crazy. The literature of crime is full of these types, men who think blood is a shortcut to greatness. But there is no shortcut. There's just the work and the silence that comes after it. The legacy of Case 006. A shuttered restaurant that will reopen in a month with higher prices. A kid rotting in a state asylum, waiting for a meal that will never satisfy him. And a stain on the floor that no amount of bleach will truly lift. The city didn't change. It just swallowed another story, burped, and asked for the check. I walked back to my car, the envelope of cash feeling heavy in my coat pocket. It felt dirty, but it spends the same. That's the problem with this town. We're all diners at the same table, eating whatever slop is served, pretending it's gourmet. Telling you this story, it's like lighting a match in a gas-filled cellar. It's dangerous, it's bright for a second, and then the darkness rushes back in, heavier than before. I don't tell you this to entertain you. I tell you because someone has to remember the ugly parts. I need to purge this silence so I can handle the next scream. The phone in my office is already ringing. I can hear it from here, a shrill demand in the empty night. Another envelope is probably sliding under my door right now. Another lie waiting to be undressed. But that's for tomorrow. Right now, I need you to do your part. If you want this office to stay open, if you want me to keep digging through the trash while you sleep soundly in your beds, you need to keep this channel alive. Subscribe, share the misery. Leave a comment and tell me what you think the taste of regret is. The night is young and the rent is due. That's enough talk. Kill the lights. Close the door on your way out. I have a glass to fill. and I prefer to drink alone.